Hey everyone, I'm Jordan Spivey, joined with my dad,
Travis Spivey, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our awesome science videos. Also, scan the QR code in the top left corner of the screen to contact us for more of our awesome content and materials.
In today's video, we will discuss the 5 different types of speciation,
So let's do this. Our learning targets for today are: number 1, I can describe and explain what speciation is, and number 2, I can explain and provide examples of the 5 different types of speciation, including allopatric, peripatric, parapatric, sympatric, and artificial speciation.
Speciation is how a new kind of plant or animal species is created. Speciation occurs when a group within a species separates from other members of a species and develops its own unique characteristics. The demands of a different environment or the characteristics of the members of the new group will differentiate the new species from their ancestors.
An example of speciation is the Galapagos finch. Different species of these birds live on different islands in the Galapagos, located in the Pacific Ocean off of South America. The finches are isolated from one another by the ocean. Over millions of years, each species of finch developed a unique beak that is especially adapted to the kinds of food it eats. Some finches have large, blunt beaks that can crack the hard shells of nuts and seeds. Other finches have long, thin beaks that can probe into cactus flowers without the bird being poked by the cactus spines. Still, other finches have medium-sized beaks that can catch and grasp insects. Because they are isolated, the birds don't breed with one another and have therefore developed into unique species with unique characteristics. This is called allopatric speciation. Notice that in allopatric speciation, the types of finch species and beak types were largely due to physical barriers like the ocean, which made it impossible for them to breed with one another. As a result, each finch species adapted to the environment and the type of food available on their specific island.
So how does allopatric speciation occur? Allopatric speciation occurs when a species separates into 2 separate groups which are isolated from one another. A physical barrier such as a mountain range or a waterway makes it impossible for them to breed with one another. Each species develops differently based on the demands of their unique habitat or the genetic characteristics of the group that are passed on to offspring. When Arizona's Grand Canyon formed, squirrels and other small mammals that have once been part of a single population can no longer contact and reproduce with each other across this new geographic barrier. They could no longer interbreed. The squirrel population underwent allopatric speciation. Today, 2 separate squirrel species inhabit the north and south rims of the canyon. On the other hand, birds and other species that could easily cross this barrier continue to interbreed and were not divided into separate populations since they could fly or had other means of getting across the barrier. This example is similar to that of the Galapagos Islands finch species we discussed earlier.
Next, how does peripatric speciation occur? When small groups of individuals break off from the larger group and form a new species, this is called peripatric speciation. As in allopatric speciation, physical barriers make it impossible for members of the groups to interbreed with one another. The main difference between allopatric speciation and peripatric speciation is that in peripatric speciation, one group is much smaller than the other. Unique characteristics of the smaller groups are passed on to future generations of the group, making those traits more common among the group and distinguishing it from the others.
Next, what occurs in peripatric speciation? In peripatric speciation, a species is spread out over a large geographic area. Although it is possible for any member of the species to mate with another member, individuals only mate with those in their own geographic region. Like allopatric and peripatric speciation, different habitats influence the development of different species in peripatric speciation. Instead of being separated by a physical barrier, the species are separated by differences in the same environment. Parapatric speciation sometimes happens when part of an environment has been polluted. Mining activities leave waste with high amounts of metals like lead and zinc. These metals are absorbed into the soil, preventing most plants from growing. Some grasses such as buffalo grass can tolerate these metals. Buffalo grass, also known as vanilla grass, is native to Europe and Asia, but is now found throughout North and South America too. Buffalo grass has become a unique species from the grasses that grow in areas not polluted by metals. Long distances can make it impractical to travel to reproduce with another member of the species. Buffalo grass seeds pass on the characteristics of the members in that region to offspring. Sometimes a species that is formed by Peripatric speciation is especially suited to survive in a different kind of environment than the original species. In this case, I like to think about Parapatric speciation as a city. Even though everyone in the city are human beings, there are some people that can survive in certain areas of the city and some that cannot. Now that I think about it, it's a lot like life. Those best adapted or suited will survive in certain environments.
Now let's talk about Sympatric speciation. Sympatric speciation is debatable. Some scientists don't believe it exists. Sympatric speciation occurs when there are no physical barriers preventing any members of a species from mating with one another, and all members are in close proximity to one another. A new species, perhaps based on a different food source or characteristic, seems to develop spontaneously. The theory is that some individuals become dependent on certain aspects of an environment, such as shelter or food sources, while others do not. A possible example of sympatric speciation is the apple maggot, an insect that lays its eggs inside of the fruit of an apple, causing it to rot. As the apple falls from the tree, the maggots dig in the ground before emerging as flies several months later. The apple maggot originally laid its eggs in the fruit of a relative of the apple, a fruit called a hawthorn. After apples were introduced to North America in the 19th century, a type of maggot developed that only lays its eggs in apples. The original hawthorn species still only lays its eggs in hawthorns. The two types of maggots are not different species yet, but many scientists believe they are undergoing the process of sympatric speciation. Artificial speciation is the form of speciation that can be achieved by the input of human influence. By separating populations and thereby preventing breeding, or by intentionally breeding individuals with desired morphological or genotypic traits, humans can create new, distinct species. This is also known as artificial selection. Most modern domesticated animals and plants have undergone artificial selection. Although evolution of our modern crops and livestock animals has taken thousands of years, it is possible to visualize the process of artificial selection in species that have short life cycles. Artificial selection has been demonstrated most effectively in species of fruit flies. Experiments in which flies are placed into environments which contain different resources or habitats show the changes that occur when the flies adapt to each environment. After several generations, the flies are removed from the experimental zone and are allowed to cohabitate. Although the populations are unable to mate due to the reproductive isolation process that occurred while in isolation.
In summary, speciation is a process within evolution that leads to the formation of new, distinct species that are reproductively isolated from one another. This means that an ancestral species splits into two or more distinct species that are genetically from one another and can no longer interbreed. Basically, they cannot mate and produce living offspring due to their genetic differences.
And that's our video for today. Now let's test your knowledge to see how proficient you are with explaining what speciation is and the 5 different types of speciation by taking our video quiz.
Use your electronic device to scan the QR code at the top right of the screen, or you can click the link in the description box below the video to take the quiz.
Remember, 80% or higher for proficiency. Record your results on your proficiency sheet, and if you don't get it the first time, you better keep going because it's not over until you win.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, click that bell icon, and also scan the QR code to contact us and explore more of our awesome content and material.
Peace and have a positive, productive day.
I could use a man of your talents. I'm in.